Alrighty, and now we are heading into an awesome block of lightning talks. We don't believe in calm agendas here in the SDG Action Zone. We just want you to be excited the entire day. So, I'm assuming we're ready? Yeah. This block of lightning talks is on islands and oceans, and for those of you who haven't been with us in the zone, these lightning talks are sort of moments for speakers from all over the universe, literally, to give you just a little insight into some of the actions that they're taking and the things that are happening in their world. And we hope that you will take those insights and actions and share them, keep the conversation going with the hashtags Act for SDGs, for People for Planet, and SDG Action Zone, because when we get the metrics back next week, I want it to be tens of hundreds of millions of people that have actually seen everything we've done here in the zone. So, with that, art made on, in, and with the water in response to the urgency of a changing climate is what is the focus of our next talk. Sarah Cameron is going to discuss a durational performance with the sea, its upcoming iterations in Kenya, New Zealand, and NYC, and how water art, it's in quotes, but it also feels very intuitive, how water art can amplify the movement in unexpected ways. Please welcome to the stage from the Sarah Cameron Sunday, co-founder and co-curator of Works on Water, Sarah Cameron Sunday.
Hi everyone. I am Sarah Cameron Sunda. I'm an artist, and I work at the intersection of performance art, video art, and public art. I'm also the co-founder of Works on Water, which is a triennial and a nonprofit organization dedicated to art made on, in, and with the water. We like to say water art is the new land art. So thank you, SDG Action Zone, for having me here. Thank you all for listening. Here we are today at the last day of the zone, and we just had this wonderful summary of what has happened, with all the energy this week, which is amazing. We just heard all these follow-ups. And so this question of how do we sustain this energy is really interesting to me. How do we expand and amplify the movement with this transition? How do we keep that pressure on? And I like to believe that art actually can do this in a really important, special way. I believe that making, experiencing, and supporting art is one of the best possible ways to take action, because it can make you see something, experience something, feel something that is unfamiliar, and this opens up new forms of awareness. As individuals, as a community, as a civilization, and as a species. Let's see. Are we gonna play? There we go. I wanna make sure we're playing the video. There we go. Okay. Ooh, we can turn the sound down, like way down. Awesome. So artists are doing this work. This project that I'm going to share with you is called 36.5, A Durational Performance with the Sea. It's an ongoing series of performances and video works where I actually stand in a tidal bay starting at low tide, and I let the water rise up to my neck, and then it goes back down again over the course of 12 to 13 hours. I work with a local community, and I invite them to participate in all aspects of the project and stand with me in the water in the final form, as well as participate on the shore. We film the whole thing in real time and then turn that into a durational video work of the same length. What you're seeing here is a time lapse of a 12-hour, 46-minute performance. There's also a 12-hour, 46-minute video. I've done this project in Maine, Mexico, San Francisco, the Netherlands, Bangladesh, and Brazil. I'm about to go to Kenya, and I will do it in New Zealand and then New York City very soon. So in the project, the tide is functioning as a metaphor for sea level rise. The project began in 2013 really as a poetic gesture that was in response to Hurricane Sandy hitting New York City, which is where I live. I suddenly realized, I had this big moment where I realized that our cities are just as vulnerable as our individual bodies. And now 36.5 has turned into this complex series of productions with so many stories, too many to tell you right now. The image I'm trying to create is of people who are unprepared for the water to rise, as in, especially in urban environments. This time lapses in the Netherlands, Katwijk aan Zee, when government officials and water engineers stood with me in the middle, including a few people who are with us in the audience right now. We'll go, the next slide is of Maine, where it began. This is where it started. This is when I really realized that the tides could be a metaphor for environmental change. So people often ask me what it feels like to stand in the water for a full tidal cycle. What do I think about? And it's a great question because the project is actually about actively trying to feel something that is a very abstract idea. It's about that scale and duration. Trying to understand what will happen when the waters will rise, with our bodies just as much as with our minds, transforming intellectual comprehension, which many of us have, into a physical understanding. During the performance, the currents will push and pull, and the power of the water is very clear. So I listen to it, and I try to stay present, and I take it all in, and I feel time passing as a sensory experience. And this is what I hope my audience will feel too, both the live audience who participates and the secondary audience who watches the slow durational videos much later. I hope that this feeling will lead to some long-term thinking. Let's look to the ancient past in order to consider the perhaps not so distant but very hard to comprehend future. So what happens if we really feel scale in our tiny bodies in relationship to our enormous planet and the 7/10 of it that is covered in ocean water? When I'm out there, I feel connected to every drop of water, to people on the other side of the world. What challenges will they face? What are they facing already? And thus the need to touch all 6 continents. Participants join me standing in the water for however long they want and mark the passing of the hours from the shore. They bring this collective strength. We are all individuals and we are all a collective humanity. And I hope they experience something that they will remember in their bodies. Vinicius is a 16-year-old production assistant in Brazil who told me, he was so proud to have stood with me for 2 hours, and he told me afterward that he felt like a tree rooting down and spreading out to find new strengths. One of the best outcomes in the Netherlands was 3 older Dutch gentlemen who told me separately that experience of standing in the water changed them. Paul Koek, who swims every day, said that he saw the water with new eyes and experienced a new sense of time and place. When you stand still in the water for long periods of time, these little changes become big events. We zoom in close in order to zoom out and see the big picture. Sometimes resilience means letting the water move you. The seemingly impossible becomes possible, and this gives me hope. My perceptions have shifted completely from doing this work, and my goal is to share this with as many people as possible. Imagine if everybody around the world could experience what sea level rise feels like on their bodies before it happens. How might our future plans for adapting to new realities shift then? So as I said, I'm working on the final 3 versions of the work. I'll be going to Kenya shortly. The next performance is November 8th. It will be live streamed. And then I'll be in New Zealand early next year, and then New York City in 2020, 8 years after Sandy. For this final work, I'm trying to do some deep community engagement with 5 to 7 frontline neighborhoods in the city, as well as create some reenactments in other parts of the world. And we're trying to reach out to people and partners around the world to have some active global participation on that final day in September of 2020. I think of it as acupuncture on the planet, transoceanic communication. So I hope that you all here today will plan to stand with me and stand with us as we move this project forward, seeing the power of art for action. Thank you.
I'm going to get it right this time. Let's have a huge round of applause for the co-founder and co-curator of Works on Water, Sarah Cameron Sunda. Now for our next talk. It's titled The Journey of Climate Activism, Youth Perspectives from Small Island Developing States. And really, I think that says it all, right? We are so excited to have those perspectives here. So please welcome, to give them to us, she's a lecturer in laws at the University of Mauritius and a BLT member of Youngo, Krishni Adnarain Apadu.
Hi everyone, so I'm Krishni and I'm from the small island developing state of Mauritius. So if some of you don't know where Mauritius is, it's a teeny island located in between Madagascar and Australia, just right in the middle. So I'm really grateful for being invited to speak today about my experience and my journey as a climate activist, as a researcher and academic, working on climate change issues and also trying to educate young people to become more engaged and to become more aware of what they can do individually as young people to change like the climate change conversation and to make sure that they have a voice at the table and that they can also contribute to policy making and agenda setting in this area. So people ask me how I was inspired to become a climate activist, and I have to stop like right now and say that, you know, activism has different meanings, and, you know, Greta is an activist. She has been doing like some tremendous work to get the conversation started about what that, you know, countries and our political leaders need really to do something about the climate. So, you know, activism can involve a lot of things. So for me, activism is not just going on the streets and striking, but for me, activism can be, you know, as a young person, being an academic, empowering young people, writing on how we can solve the climate change dilemma, trying to find ways we can protect our oceans, especially in islands. So people tell me how I was inspired to do the kind of work that I'm doing, which I must say started a couple of years ago when after I finished my second master's at SOAS in the UK, and I took a module. It was known. The module name was Climate Change and Energy Policy. And after doing that module, I felt that, you know, something was really wrong in terms of, you know, the climate and the environment, and I had to do something, anything, to change that. So that was when I started, you know, I said, okay, I will do my dissertation thesis, you know, I will do my dissertation topic on climate change, mitigation and adaptation, like from the perspective of small island developing states. And I was also invited by the UNESCO in 2013 to contribute as a youth climate activist to the United Nations 3rd International Conference on Small Island Developing States. And we held a couple of preparatory meetings in the Seychelles, which is our sister island, and that galvanized action as young people all over the world, in the Ames region, in the Caribbean, and also in the Pacific, where we were invited to contribute to the agenda as young people for the SIDS Summit in Samoa in 2014. So what have I been doing in terms of, you know, like local and grassroots action? So my first work is, you know, in my day job, I work as a lecturer and I teach environmental and climate change law and policy to undergraduate students. So at the University of Mauritius, we have the curriculum, the LLB, which is the law undergraduate degree. So we have included environmental law and climate change law as a module. So since 6 years, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to train the next generation of climate environmental lawyers. So that's what I try to do, and, you know, in all of my classes, I try to find some time to engage with my students and tell them that, you know, as young people, as the next generation of climate leaders and environmentalists, you have a role to play to make sure that you are the ones which contribute to changing policy, to finding concrete action in order to protect our oceans, to protect our nature, and to protect our environment. So I'm also part of the Yongo BLT. So Yongo is the official youth constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And what do? As the BLT, we empower young people to be part of the conversation whenever policy is being made at international level or at local level. So we try to empower young people to have a voice at the table and also to contribute to policy making. And in terms of oceans and islands, I'm just gonna, So, I live in an island and we are surrounded by the sea, and sometimes we take that for granted as islanders. So I can't remember the last time I went to the beach, because we say, oh, the beach is just right next door and we don't go to the beach. But I think that for us it's very easy to take for granted everything that we have. Not the ocean, not just the ocean, but we have such a beautiful planet, and we think that, it's God has given us, or a greater power has given us the opportunity to live on that planet. But I think if we have been given the chance to live on such a beautiful planet, we have such beautiful oceans, such amazing rainforest. So I think we have the responsibility to protect whatever we have, and whatever kind of work we do, it should be with the thought that, okay, I have been given this chance to live on this beautiful planet, so what am I going to do for the future generations? Am I going to give them the chance of being here, of enjoying this beauty, this natural environment, or I'm just not going to care about the next generations? So this quote is, how inappropriate to call this planet Earth when it is clearly ocean. And we are surrounded by oceans, and it's easy for us to forget that. It's easy for us to forget that we have a duty towards people who are living in those vulnerable countries and who are going to maybe get submerged at some point. So what are we doing, and what kind of grassroots action and kind of policy changes are we, as governments, as NGOs, and as private companies, are we doing to make sure that we leave the oceans as clean and as beautiful for the next generations? So this quote is really important because it says that we need to respect the oceans as if our lives depend on them, because they do. And that's very important for us to remember. And finally, I like this quote because it says that we are tied to the ocean, and when we go back to the sea, whether it is to sail or to watch, we are going back from whence we came. So we don't forget that this planet has been given to us. We are stewards of this planet. We are stewards of the ocean, and we have the responsibility and the duty to protect the planet and to help solve all the problems that we have on this planet. Thank you.
It's always funny because I don't want to stand right there and loom over you, but then I'm too far to race up the stage. So forgive me these longish transitions. Thank you again to Krishni Adnarayan-Apadu. And our next talk comes from the project leader at Restore Coral. Restore Coral stands for Strategy and Innovation, Implementing Emerging Technology, Artivism, which is a word you should be tweeting right now as soon as I finish and he finishes his talk, Strategic Liaison, Soft Power Social Change, and Civic Participation, Paving the Way for Resilience Tourism and the Integration of local fisheries into the restoration efforts of Mexico. Please welcome the project leader of Restore Coral, Roberto Cerda.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Well, I love this section because it's action zone, and to be honest, well, I'm very action-oriented. I actually get in trouble because I'm very action-oriented. But this trouble have led to very interesting things, and I would love to share you what has been happening. So, 5 years ago, I was recruited in a project called 2050 Life Investments, and they were aligned to the 2050 agenda, to the Millennium Agenda, which is previous to the SDGs, and they were looking for out-of-the-box thinking, action-oriented innovators, let's say, that can empower philanthropy, promote philanthropy, and start to take action from another angle. And little by little, I became kind of the proof of concept of this initiative. And this is something that we have been doing for the last 5 years. So first we took one technology, was big data, and we started to map everything that has to do with oceans. And of course, we got really fast on track, and suddenly, you know, we have a message to share. So we began with virtual reality. Virtual reality has a tremendous capacity to lead people from curiosity to interest, from interest to desire, and from desire to action. And what is the action? Of course, restore the coral. And we took it to places where there was no access to this technology, so rural, Mayan, schools that even if they live in the Mexican Caribbean, they don't know that what is going on the water. And what is going on the water is that we are facing the biggest loss of natural capital, primary production for the underwater fauna, and of course the ecosystem services. And now, with all of these new phenomena, this thing is going even worse. So virtual reality gives us a great opportunity to take people in this virtual dive and suddenly have someone understanding better what was going on. So the kids were amazing. Actually, they are the ones who lead us to the real core of our mission. But we also place it with people who are very high-end. And this led to a very interesting community that suddenly we were on the Congress of Mexico presenting initiatives and also introducing possibilities to have election commitments translated into environmental actions, like this action called One Vote, One Coral. So for the state of Quintana Roo, the governor, the elected governor, actually commit for each vote that he got one coral colony. That's 6,240,000 coral units within his period of governance. It sounds beautiful, but you know, politics sometimes it takes a little bit of encouragement from the civic society to actually fulfill the commitment. Nevertheless, they have started these last 2 years with the project, and there is the intention of they have already planted like 3.1 thousand corals units. So they're a little bit left behind, but unfortunately the situation in the water is worse, and I don't think that it will really generate an effect. But anyway, we did that. And then a point of agreement on the Senate of the Republic in which civic society participation and the implementation of global emerging technology can lead to a strength the environmental agenda. We passed that on it. And then in the federal elections, we also, you know, it was right on Oceans Day, it was June, and we present a whole bunch of initiatives that they are based on the best practice of the SDG 14 and the Decade of Science of UNESCO, and the government took it and published it. So now the federal agenda is committed to most of the commitments that we present. So that was awesome, but we need to do more. So we also did murals from the Pacific to the Caribbean. We have over 76 murals, and with an open invitation to anybody who wants to participate, and especially placing these corals where people don't know what is the ocean, because if the Mexican people doesn't know the natural heritage that they have and how valuable it is, they will never stand for it. So we did that as well, a lot of festivals, high-level events, all of these, and then we start to get, you know, I mean, in parallel, let's say, we got on the water. So what you see on the right side is this program that is due to the election commitment that we got, is the INAPESCA, is the Mexican Institute of Fishery. So they have, they're doing microfragmentation, which is one of the latest technologies for propagation of coral, but we also create a resilience restoration experience. So we take people underwater to work in a farm underwater, and it's not that much of the coral that we can actually plant. It's more about having people to engage in this agenda. And more than 350 people has done it. They all love the project. We know is the bomb. Unfortunately, all that coral has died due to the bacteria called the white syndrome. But these together, I mean, we got them like, it was a little money, but like $1 million to the Mexican Institute of Fishery for their project. And this one is already ongoing and working. And we have everything to escalate it to all the island or whatever. We have a plug-and-play ready-to-go solution in a container, so everybody can be planting coral in their own corner of the planet. So I was talking about the white syndrome because this is the most important topic that I have to address today, okay? We saw the 2040 scenario, the 20-some scenario, And we said, like, okay, well, we have this time to work on it, but it didn't happen. Everything moved forward, okay? And this bacteria is a white stony tissue, I think they call it in Florida, and they're working to do exactly the same that we are doing in Mexico, but with a $160 million budget. And there's also all around the Caribbean, this bacteria. But what happened is that this crisis allowed me to bring together all the infrastructure of Mexico, which is the labs of the CICESE, that's the subsystem of aquatic genetic resources. So they have the technology of cryogenization, coral genomics. This idea came out after meeting the founder of the Human Genome Project. Then the Mexican Autonomous University, who specialize on assisted sexual reproduction, so you preserve the genetic diversity of the coral. And the INAPESCA, which is the academic arm of the Mexican Institute of Fishery, and this is basically microfragmentation. Together, we're doing the Ark of Noah. What I mean with the Ark of Noah is basically we want to guarantee that the next generation is going to have the prime source of genetic material to grow the coral inland and repopulate it. This is an ongoing project. I'm not talking about like I'm waiting for the rest of the world to support me, because I know everybody's dealing with a lot, and there is not such a thing as one ocean community striving to help us all together to save what we can on our own regions. We are pretty alone, and I understand and respect it, and I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just going to remark the obvious. We are not taking action on time. We saw the 2030, 2040 scenario arriving on 2020. This is happening today. The coral is just dying hard. Next year will be expected that 90% is going to be out. So we put this effort together, and I'm raising as much support as is possible. This is my mission right now. The project's objectives are, secure Ark of Noah, a genetic bank. It's kind of biblical. And I know that we need to work on the water quality, and I know that we need to work with a lot of other things, and it's going to be very complicated. But with this, at least we can give a little advantage, and we have an horizon to beat the time frame, okay? So Restore Coral started as a movement, then it became an NGO, and then it became a company. Now I don't know what is going to happen, but we are just citizens trying to do our best, and we rely on the support of others who are specialized in public policy and business and all of that to support us, because we cannot do everything. But I think this is the most important thing that we can be doing on the water, because the situation is there. Category 5 hurricanes, bacteria, pathogens all over. They're going to be spread out like crazy in this next year. Of course, the temperatures that is rising. So let's try to give the next generation an advantage and have something for them, to preserve, to work for. And now that you are all informed, I make you also responsible. So thank you very much for your attention.
And the website is saveplanetnow.com. You are informed, which means you are responsible. We deeply appreciate that. And Peter Thompson said this morning that this is the start of a decade of ocean science. So all the things you're hearing support that, which means it's up to you now to go make the decade of ocean science a successful one. So now for our final Islands and Oceans lightning talk. It's been amazing so far, yeah? Very good. That's what I like to hear. The digital revolution is changing the way we live and work, giving new opportunities for island communities worldwide to collaborate and exchange knowledge. This has many implications, but the key is for disparate communities to exchange information with each other without needing to leave their islands. So here to talk to us about building bridges between islands for sustainability, please welcome the Director of Island Innovation, James Elsmore. Let's give James a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. Last but not least, I hope. Good afternoon. Are you still awake? Okay, I know it's been a long week, so I appreciate you bearing with me. So what I'm going to talk about today is something that might be quite obvious at first. Islands are all very different. I'm not sure where my slides are. So islands come in a huge range of shapes and sizes. We heard from Mauritius today. We've heard from the Caribbean in the session before. But there are islands in the Arctic like Greenland. There are islands in Australia, and there are islands, there are over 100 inhabited islands in my own country of the UK. So that's quite obvious. Islands are all very different, and that might be in climate, that might be in culture, that might be in weather. But one of the opportunities is that islands also have a lot in common. And so what we want to do is to connect these very, very distant, very, very separate islands that might not have the opportunity to interact and show what can they learn from each other? What can be in common? How can an island in the far north of Russia learn and exchange something with an island in the Caribbean? Because all of these places are dealing with extremely high energy costs, are dealing with waste management issues, and are dealing with a vast other array of sustainable development problems, but also opportunities. So we've heard a lot about the problems this week, but changes in digital technology allow us to bring in, is an opportunity to share that information. We come to these events, as fantastic as they are, we share information, but let's be honest, we see a lot of the same faces at these events. As much as this venue is fantastic and is allowing perhaps a new group of people to come into the room, the problem is there's always going to be people that don't have the resources, that don't have the opportunity to get here. And I think for a lot of islanders, the costs are particularly extreme. To get from my country, from the UK to Jamaica, can often be cheaper than from getting from Jamaica to Barbados. So even within a region like the Caribbean, the cost of travel between those islands is really phenomenal. So the Virtual Island Summit started as an idea just to really bring these people together to share information. So what does it look like if we have a panel discussion with someone from Fiji, someone from Mauritius, someone from Tasmania, and someone from Shetland in the north of Scotland? We are wanting to connect these places to have a really useful conversation. And I think what's the most important part of that is participation. If we can allow people from the grassroots communities to participate in events like this and summits like this, then they're going to benefit hugely. And as much as the high-level discussions are really important, bringing those grassroots communities in is vital, because they're the people who are getting things done on the ground. Whether it's energy, so I've sat in on several conversations with groups in Scotland and groups in the Caribbean talking about energy issues, and it's really interesting to see how much they have in common. If you look at the areas of the UK that have the highest levels of energy poverty, they're in the north and the west of Scotland. And energy poverty in those regions is as much as a third. People paying, that means that people are paying over a fifth of their income just to heat their homes. If you look at Jamaica, the cost of electricity in Jamaica is around 4 times higher than the average cost in America. And obviously Jamaicans' average income is much lower. So there's a huge disparity there in terms of things like energy. And what is happening in terms of innovation in Scotland, in the Caribbean, and in many other island regions is really, really exciting. Yes, these costs are detrimental to the economy. Yes, they have issues. But let's rethink that as an opportunity, because that means that they're being pushed to innovate and are really often ahead of the curve. So what we're seeing happening in the islands around the world today, they're solving the issues that are going to be that all other areas are going to face. And again, I mentioned energy, that's my background, but this also applies in things like waste management as well. The second aspect, as well as participation, is we need to rethink about how we do conferences. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be flying everywhere. Clearly, as amazing as Greta's journey across the Atlantic was, we're not asking everyone to do that, and there's a huge value in having people to come together. But as well as allowing people to participate, we want to rethink about how we use technology and allow people to join. I'm really excited that this event is being live streamed, that people at home can access all the fantastic things that have happened here this week. But let's take that to the next level. How can it be an interactive experience? Yes, we want people to watch and take these things away. With the summit, what we're trialing, and this is definitely an early stage thing that we want to develop in the future, is how that experience can be both ways. So how can people sitting at home share their own experiences, have input into a conversation, but also learn from things from what's happening in other parts of the world. So I'm really excited we've had this Islands and Oceans Day, Islands and Oceans session today. We've had a whole day of island discussion. And clearly a lot of that focus, because we're at the United Nations, has been on SIDS countries that have their own delegations here. But there's also many other islands around the world that don't have the opportunity to send a delegation here. That might be because they're part of a larger country, like Tasmania, like Shetland. It might be because they're a territory, like the Cayman Islands or Puerto Rico, and they're represented by a larger country's delegation. And so what we want to do is also bring in those different islands regardless of their political status. What can a county, an island that is made up of a county, have in common with a small island developing state that has the opportunity to represent itself on the global stage? So thank you all so much for having me today. Thank you for all of the conversations that have gone already. And I really want to encourage you to think about how we can continue to use events at the United Nations, not only to use communications, digital technology in a way that it allows fewer carbon emissions and allows us to not necessarily have to fly so many people around the world. But what I actually think is even more important than that is allow people from across the world to participate regardless of what background they come from and how remote they live. And obviously, we need better internet connections, but the exciting thing we're now seeing over the next few years is that even in the remotest parts of the world, internet connections are getting better, they're getting faster, and so let's think about how we can change the way we do things. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, James, for awesome work. Thank you, all our lightning talk speakers, for awesome work. The website is islandinnovation.com/summit. .co/summit. So support all of our speakers. And with that, we are going to take a 10-minute break and come back for a very exciting session. And you know, if I'm saying it's exciting, it's going to be. But I don't want to preview it more than that. So we'll take a little breather and then be back with us at 1:45.